Bournemouth can announce that the club has parted company with their head coach, Scott Parker. Wow. Now, obviously, this comes off the back of an absolute hammering from Liverpool, but they've just made their way back into the Premier League. Obviously, it wasn't looking very good for them in terms of the sign of the games that they'd had so far, but now they have officially parted ways with Scott Parker. Alex Crook is on the line now to discuss more. He's our talkSPORT South Coast correspondent. Crookie, are you there?
I'm there, yeah. Good morning.
Hi, Alex. Okay, talk us through this one, because they won against Villa in their opening game 2-0. Since then, back-to-back losses. But that's to Manchester City, Arsenal and Liverpool. Are you surprised with this?
No, I'm not, in all honesty. In fact, when we recorded the Game Day podcast previewing the season, I put up Scott Parker as my choice for the first manager to be relieved of his duty. I think this goes deeper than results on the pitch. Obviously, losing 9-0 to Liverpool or to anybody doesn't help a manager's cause, but I think this is more about the relationship between Scott Parker and the powers that be at the Vitality Stadium, which has been strained for several weeks now. And actually, if you look at the statement, the owner, Maxim Demin, quite a crucial line from him. He thanks Scott Parker for his efforts and the fact he led them back to promotion to the Premier League last season. But he says quite tellingly, in order to keep us progressing as a team and a club, it is unconditional. We are aligned in our strategy to run the club sustainably. We must also show belief in and respect for one another. That respect word is quite key, because if you listen to Scott Parker, before a ball was even kicked competitively this season, he was moaning about a lack of new signings, suggesting that Bournemouth weren't equipped to cope in the Premier League. It was a phrase that came out again after that 9-0 defeat. And I think that upset the hierarchy at Bournemouth, who have been working tirelessly this summer to try and bring in reinforcements, but to try and do it in a sustainable way as well, so as not to risk the future of the football club. So I think basically it comes down to a dispute between Parker and the hierarchy about finances and about how money has been invested or not, in his opinion, this summer.
Alex, who do you think's right in that?
I can see both sides. I don't think it's helpful, even after a 9-0 defeat, when a manager comes out and says that the team isn't equipped to compete in the Premier League, because who's he talking about from that starting 11? Also, Scott was backed heavily in the transfer market in January. Bournemouth bought in half a dozen players, some like Todd Cantwell on decent wages from the Premier League, to get them promoted. Not many of those signings worked out particularly well, it has to be said. In fact, Cantwell, by the end of the season, was watching from the stands. So I can see both sides. I'm not sure after those signings that Bournemouth particularly had a lot of faith in giving Scott Parker money, that he would spend it in the best way possible. But equally, I think any manager, when you're newly promoted to the Premier League, wants to have the best possible opportunity to keep a team there. Scott didn't feel that was the case. I think had he not have been relieved of his duties this morning, there was the possibility, come the end of the transfer window, that he may have contemplated taking the decision out of the club's hand, although it's very unusual, isn't it, for any manager to walk away from a big contract. It's quite an unsavoury ending to what has been largely a successful period, obviously getting them promoted last season. And it will be interesting to see where Scott Parker goes from here. Will he now be bracketed as one of those managers who is very good at taking a team out of the Championship, but maybe at the moment not quite equipped himself to keep them in the Premier League?
They've got Wolves tomorrow, so Gary O'Neill's going to take interim charge of them. He's going to be assisted by Sean Cooper and Tommy Elphick. So what do you think? It's probably too early to say now. Who goes in there? What do they do next, Bournemouth?
That's a $1 million question. Obviously, this news is fairly fresh this morning, but I have been thinking over the last couple of weeks, who could they bring in to replace Scott Parker? If you're looking for a firefighting type manager to keep a team in the Premier League, then maybe Sean Dyche is the obvious choice. I don't know if they'll go down that route. I'm not convinced they have a successor in mind, because I think this is a decision they've reached fairly quickly. I will make some calls this morning and try and get a steer as to what direction they will go in. I think it'll be interesting tomorrow night, the atmosphere at the Vitality Stadium, because speaking to Bournemouth supporters, they never really fell in love with Scott Parker either. They didn't particularly enjoy the football that was played last season, even though it brought success at the end. I think a lot of them found his comments about a lack of financial backing a little bit unsavoury. So I don't think many Bournemouth fans will shed a tear that Scott Parker has gone, and that's a bit of a sad reflection on a manager who's led them to promotion. I would expect a sort of siege mentality tomorrow night. You mentioned the people there, Gary O'Neill, very highly rated coach, Tommy Elphick, someone who bleeds Bournemouth. He was part of the team that won promotion to the Premier League first time around. So I think actually this makes Wolves' challenge tomorrow night a little bit more testing.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Alex. Really good from you there. Take care, and we'll get you back on when we know a little bit more. Alex Crook there on the news that Scott Parker has been sacked by Bournemouth. Now, we referenced some of the comments that Scott Parker made that might have been part of the reason why Bournemouth weren't happy with him. This is after the 9-0 loss at Anfield at the weekend. This is what Scott Parker had to say about that result.
It was painful. It was absolutely painful. Liverpool were ruthless. My boys were flat to the floor. Like, I don't think I can look at one of them and say, yeah, okay, we lacked here, lacked there. They were foot to the floor, and they, at times searching for some oxygen really, and trying to breathe really. So yeah, it was a tough, humbling experience what we've had today, really.
So you've got two sides of the argument there. One side from people saying, look, he got them promoted and then he wasn't backed, which is something that Scott Parker felt, versus the comments that got him in trouble with the board potentially, and people saying, look, we've got to do this in a sustainable way so that you don't ruin the club and you can maintain your place in the Premier League. I'll just run you past the results one more time before I get your thoughts on this, guys. So obviously the first game they beat Aston Villa 2-0. Then they lost 4-0 to Manchester City, 3-0 to Arsenal and 9-0 to Liverpool. Those results for me at the time, I didn't feel like were a huge... I mean, the 9-0, of course, didn't expect that scoreline. But if you just take a win and a loss, I didn't expect them to get much out of those games anyway. Ali, where do you stand on this? Are you shocked? Did you expect it?
Well, I'm not shocked, and I'll tell you why. Because I said on the programme on numerous occasions that Scott Parker has basically made a sort of cry for help in terms of players coming into his team and into his squad, because he said on numerous occasions that his squad needs help, right? And by that he means additions to the squad. So a manager will maybe say it once and make his point, but Scott Parker clearly felt that it should be said more than once, and he said it on a few occasions. And I've been in the game long enough to know that will annoy the people running the club, because it is an attack on them, and an angle that Scott Parker is saying that he is not being supported to strengthen the squad where he thinks it's needed. So a bit like Crook, I can see both points. So I'm not totally shocked at the decision. I don't think it's the results this season. As shocking as the 9-0 was, I actually don't think it's the results that's got Scott Parker the sack. He's had a good result in opening 1-2-0, obviously. 3 games where you maybe wouldn't expect him to get points, not get beat 9-0, not score a goal. But is it a surprise to me? Not massively, no.
talkSPORT Breakfast with Laura Woods, Monday to Wednesday mornings 6 till 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.